Hey y'all, happy Sunday. I'm doing a little bit of a deep dive on the first episode of the Pitt Hour 1. Just because I'm obsessed and this show occupies like my entire brain. So I'm going to get that out and get it on to y'all. So for those of y'all that don't know, the Pit is on Max, HBO, that good stuff. It stars Noah Wiley as Dr. Rabinovich, Dr. Robbie. And he is the central character in a busy Pittsburgh trauma center. And one of the really cool things about the Pit is that it's clear all of the relationships are filtered through Dr. Robbie's eyes and through Noah Wiley's lens. He's also a writer on the show. He's also an executive producer. He helped bring the show to screen. And it's clear that he's the leader there. If you watch the behind the scenes stuff with the cast, that's pretty clear. So Robbie's the center, right? All relationships in the entire ER filter through his lens. So it opens. First episode opens. They follow an ambulance over a river in Pittsburgh. It picks up Noah Wiley walking with his headphones on, as he's starting a day in the shift, or starting a shift in the ER. Hour 1. He first interacts with a couple of nurses, Perla and Princess, and then interacts with Dana, the charge nurse. And then he asks where Dr. Abbott is, which was the attending that was on staff on duty before he picks up his shift. She says he's getting air. He leaves. We pick up Dana's point of view, which takes us into the bathroom where we see Dr. Heather Collins vomiting. Dana confirms that she is knocked up, kind of leaves me wondering who the daddy is, which gets answered in episode 11. Dana asks Heather to give Dr. Robbie a break because it's the anniversary of his mentor's death. And he doesn't typically work that day. So we pick back up with Dr. Robbie. They're on the roof. He's on the roof with Jack Abbott, Dr. Jack Abbott, doing a handoff. Jack is clearly had a rough shift. He's lost a veteran. The theme of burnout throughout the department, throughout emergency medicine, is established very well. Oh, like immediately, really from the moment you walk in. Robbie walks in the hospital through the waiting room and sees an overwhelmed waiting room. But yeah, that's the burnout is established from jump. So we go back to the ER, and there's a new crop of med students and interns and residents. So meet the docs before rounds. Dr. Melissa King and R2, glorious. Dr. Shamira Mohan, oh, I believe she's a third-year resident. Dr. Langdon, I believe he is an R4 because he's a senior resident. Dr. McKay, Cassie McKay, R3. This is the actor I'm going to shout out from the Pit today. Fiona Dorff, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. She is luminous. She is glorious. I love Dr. McKay. So she was in the Chucky movies. Her dad was the original voice of Chucky. Very interesting. What else did I see about her? Hold on, I go into my notes now. Yeah, I have so many notes. Let's see. So yeah, so there for 6 degrees of Bravo, boom, that's only 1 degree. She's in the Chucky movies, boom, Jennifer Tilly. Also, I was thinking about this. Shouldn't be a 6 degrees of Bravo. Should be a 6 degrees of Kyle Richards. Because Kyle Richards being in ER connects her with a huge ensemble cast of all these people that came in and out of that show. And then connects her with present day Noah Wiley. Just saying. 6 degrees of Kyle Richards. Somebody make that game that's good with graphics. I'm just not. Anyway, So, Dr. McKay, yes, who immediately, uncle, I'm in love. Then we get Dr. Trinity Santos. She's an intern. We get Victoria Javade. She's a third year medical student. We get Dennis Whitaker, aka Huckleberry. He's a fourth year medical student. And we see Dr. Heather Collins again, um, also a senior resident. And honestly, next week the actor I'll focus on will be Tracy. If I cannot, I'm going to work on pronouncing, but she's amazing as Dr. Collins. She's just amazing. So while he's kind of doing the introductions with the interns and the med students, he kind of breaks down for us, the audience, the issues. One of the biggest issues with overcrowding in ERs, and that's boarding. So, busy trauma center, the hospital will board patients down in the ER rather than hire more nurses to look after them up in the hospital because that is more cost effective. So, they round on their patients. Robbie's steadily teaching through the entire thing. They get interrupted by a trauma that comes in. It's a woman who doesn't speak English, and she has the cops at this point aren't sure whether she jumped, fell, was pushed, but she's fallen off I think it's the L or no, it's not the L, it's the T in Pittsburgh, but the metro tracks, and her foot is clubbed and it's raw. It's very graphic in the gore part. It's the only part my daughter doesn't like. Sorry. Um, And then we're also tracking the other part of that trauma is the Good Samaritan that saved her from the train crushing her tracks. And then he fell and hit his head trying to climb back up. So Robbie's jumping between traumas. And then the hospital administrator, Gloria, shows up and is like haranguing Robbie a little bit. During the trauma with the woman who clubbed her foot, there's some clear tension between Langdon and the nurses and Langdon and the women in general, even between him and Dr. Heather. Uh, okay. Yeah. And so then Gloria, the administrator, while Robbie and while Robbie's jumping from trauma to trauma and one of them finally calms down, is haranguing him about patient satisfaction scores up his ass. And I think he handles her well, but you can tell that she is getting to him. So he highlights the hospital staffing issues, and then Gloria goes motherfucking low and brings up his mentor, Dr. Admonson, who it's the anniversary of his death and he shouldn't be with him, be there today, and the mentor died during COVID. Brings that shit up. And Rob is like, motherfucker, fuck you for saying that shit. Also, the woman who doesn't speak English, the woman had her foot clubbed in the trauma room. They're having a really hard time figuring out what language she speaks. And Dr. Collins figures it out later. But my son said at this point, why the fuck didn't they pull up Google Translator? Just saying. Anyway, Victoria passes out while they're working on the clubbed foot woman, earning her the nickname Crash. Then we pick up with McKay and Mateo. They're working on this guy named Otis who crashes when they draw blood. He's got hyperkalemia from exercising and not being hydrated enough and stuff. Mohan and Mel switch up the Good Samaritan. And they stitch up. I can't read my writing. The Good Samaritan, and you see, even though you've already kind of seen her vulnerability and awkwardness, you really see Mel's vulnerability in this scene. Um, we go back to Otis. Robbie is getting in. They're trying to the guy is crashing again, and Robbie does some bedside stuff to correct the calcium in the guy's blood, and that helps. It's like some bedside combat medicine that was very cool. Only comes with Santos. Um, or only comes with experience. I'm reading and saying the wrong shit. Anyway, Santos starts talking shit to Crash and Huckleberry Whitaker. They do a good job of making us kind of not really like Santos. And later on, that's kind of important. Um, Back to Otis and Robbie. He's teaching. pulls Heather aside, and it's clear that they have a history. And I even said, they be fucking when the episode first aired to my son. McKay explains to Otis what happened with his hypokalemia. Robbie picks up with Dana, the charge nurse, at the desk, and they talk about the morning arrival of the living dead, which is when nursing homes do bed checks on their patients. There's a surge of patients from nursing homes when there are issues. This brings us in two patients that are DNR. One of them they find out rather quickly. The other one, it's a whole thing throughout a couple of episodes. Joseph Spencer. Anyway, he's got sepsis. Let's see. The other one that what was they were in the middle of a Lucas thing, an automatic thing that does CPR, was doing CPR when they were brought in. They find out they have a DNR. They suspend all life saving treatment, and then Robbie explains that every time they lose a patient, they take a moment to remember that person's humanity and that person's life. He has to physically stop Langdon from leaving the room, and then while everyone else is being respectful, Langdon's just jumping around. Clearly ADHD, clearly looking for dopamine, right? And in the middle of this, for some comic relief, Huckleberry's phone goes off, but also puts a little bit of a target on his back with Robbie. He's like, you know, maybe put it on silent when you're at work. Um, Robbie sends Victoria to triage because she had crashed. And then she says something about special treatment and is clearly super sensitive about her age because she's like 20. And then we find out that her mother is a surgeon at the hospital. She lies to her mom about the whole crash nickname after Santos outs her. Um, then they talk about how they don't really have any place to put the patients that are dying. Let's see. Langdon talks about, ooh, should I get a dog? Acting impulsively. Mel has a lethargic kid, Tyler, who comes in. Santos and Huckleberry. Santos fixes Huckleberry's finger. Um, and let me tell you, I slammed my thumb in a car door. That shit fucking hurts. I cussed that nurse 50 ways to Sunday when they burned a hole in my nail bed. Lord have mercy. And this is where Whitaker gets the nickname Huckleberry. He's from the middle of nowhere in Nebraska. So there you go. Dr. Collins solves the language mystery by using a map, but again, her phone. Turns out the woman with the clubbed foot is from Nepal. Victoria and McKay are working on what they suspect is an unhoused woman with a burn from a sterno. Here we meet Kiara, the second most overworked person in the hospital, next to Robbie, the hospital social worker. Um, Kiara is clearly, or I'm sorry, Victoria is clearly sensitive about her age. She does confirm her mom's a surgeon, says she's 20, and her dad's also a doctor. We also find out that McKay is a 40-year-old resident. So they go into the waiting room to start to grab some patients, and they come across Mr. Driscoll, who's a keyed up, entitled douchebag who had chest pains and is pissed that he's not being taken back soon enough. They're, pulling the blood work to see if he's had a heart attack. He's told he could wait. My son clocked it immediately from the first episode. This motherfucker's trouble. Enter a new patient, Teresa and David. She comes in puking. He's kind of supporting her. McKay and Victoria grab a wheelchair and get her back. She can't stop puking. She's there with her teenage son. Otis crashes again. They drain fluid from around his heart. Um, Robbie walks Heather through pericardiocentesis. So Teresa, David seems kind of depressed, unaffected. Her husband, she tells us that they lost her husband to COVID. Then we have Huckleberry go with Mr. Milton, who's got belly pain, turns out to be a gallstone. The nurse princess suggests an EKG. McKay goes to Robbie about Teresa. It's pretty clear at this point that she really hero worships him in a way. Um, Tyler's labs, little kid that's lethargic, are normal, and they find some residue, and they find out that he has the remnants of a weed gummy. Langdon makes an emotional situation a little bit better by taking the dad out. Later on, in a later episode, he needs Robbie to step in. Back to Teresa. McKay brings in Robbie to talk to Teresa. Uh, they tell her that they have to do a pelvic to get David out of the room so they can talk. Teresa admits to taking Ipecac to make herself sick to get David to the ER to get him help because she thinks she has found what she thinks is a kill list of his of classmates, female classmates. And she didn't want to get the cops involved, but she wanted to get him help. So she made herself sick. David is 18 though. So that presents an issue. We go back to Santos and Crash. Victoria is trying to establish some boundaries. She doesn't like being called Crash. Robbie gets with Kiara about the possibility about Teresa. Again, Kiara is maybe the only person in the hospital more burned out than Robbie. Robbie tries to talk to David and bring Kiara in to help, but David bolts with a swiftness. And while Robbie is trying to chase him down, a new trauma comes in, college kid, unresponsive, and Robbie's going back in to work on the new trauma, and his PTSD starts to hit, and he starts reliving the day that they lost Dr. Edmondson, and that's it. That's the episode. So, are y'all watching this? Do y'all love this show as much as I do? I'm obsessed. Severance ends this week, and right now, The Pit occupies 75% of my brain. After Severance, it will definitely occupy 90% of my brain because I still have a little bit left for Housewives. So y'all let me know what you think. I'm gonna keep doing these. I'm gonna do these episode by episode. I really like this show. I think it's really special. Join me tomorrow for Manic Monday, where I will recap tonight's John Oliver and tell you all the things that I'm going to cram in my ear and eye holes this upcoming week. And then join me Tuesday for Tinfoil Tiara Tuesday. I'm going to talk about Wicked and the straight washing of that and how the movie actually does a much better job than the original, well, not than the Broadway play does, of communicating those themes. So, and how I don't fuck with Kristen Chenoweth. So, but y'all join me for that and have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.